A single dad's amazing help for a stranger revealed to be the judge deciding his fate. The shriek of metal twisting around metal rang in Ryan's ears as he rushed towards the wreckage. Just another day in his life, a monotonous grind at Joe's auto repair, punctuated by the sharp tang of oil and the desperate bell of bills piling on kitchen counters. Yet this felt different. A knot in his gut told him that today his actions might really matter. He recognized the driver slumped in the crumpled car. Sarah, a spirited dreamer wanting to open a cafe, who had once smiled at him over coffee cups during his breaks. The world grew thin around Ryan as he pulled her free, adrenaline sparking life back into him amid the suffocating weight of his own troubles. For a brief instant, her grateful smile flickered warmth into his darkened heart, igniting hope that had been smothered for too long. Yet hope felt like a flame, fragile and flickering, threatening to extinguish any moment, especially when bills flooded in like dark clouds over his modest home. Every late notice came imbued with the panic of impending foreclosure. His heart raced just thinking about it, tightening his chest as thoughts of his children echoed in his mind. How much longer could he keep up this facade of normalcy? The only thing heavier than the rent due was his shame, because he had to accept loans from family and fend off the gnawing fear of losing the only home they'd ever known. As days passed, Ryan and Sarah's bond grew, yet each laugh over cups of coffee screamed at him from inside to confess the truth about the impending court date. Lies ruin lives, a voice in his mind hissed, bitter with the weight of unshared secrets. He wrestled with protecting her vibrant optimism, a stark contrast to his own bleak reality. If only she could see through the cracks he felt widening. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Yet there was a sinister shadow lurking. The dreaded court date loomed ever closer. Judge Mitchell's name twisted his insides into knots. He was harsh, a name associated with relentless judgments and unforgiving sentences. And she was the daughter of that very man. Would Sarah see him as a failure, just another broken man tethered to his own shattered dreams? As he approached the courtroom, with its stark walls and flickering fluorescent lights, unease gripped him. The tension was more than just the specter of losing his home. It was the fear of shattering the fragile world Sarah represented. Would he break her heart? With his future now teetering precariously, he couldn't shake the doubt clawing at him. The clock ticked down, and when he stood before Judge Mitchell, he felt the weight of the world collapse around him. As the judge's gaze flickered to Sarah in the front row, recognition sparked, a moment fraught with uncertainty and dread. Ryan's heart thundered against his ribs. Would their friendship shield him from judgment, or would it intensify the decision against him? Time slowed as he stood trembling under the harsh light, waiting for the hammer of fate to fall. The air felt thick, heavy with the tension of unspoken truths, leaving Ryan at the edge of despair. Would he lose everything he fought for, or somehow find the strength to confront both his past and his uncertain future? The courtroom held its breath as the judge opened his mouth to deliver a decision that could unravel Ryan's life. The judge cleared his throat, and the sound echoed like a distant bell tolling doom. Ryan felt as if the room had shrunk, the walls closing in, as the weight of expectation pressed upon his shoulders. Judge Mitchell's expression remained inscrutable, revealing nothing of what lay beneath his calm exterior. Would the decision reflect his daughter's kindness or his own failures? "Mr. Ryan Thomas," the judge began, and even the sound of his name felt heavy with consequence. "You stand here today facing the possibility of losing your home, a reality many families navigate with unfortunate frequency. I've reviewed the circumstances surrounding your case, including your recent financial struggles. However, a charged silence enveloped the courtroom, and Ryan's breath escaped him in a rush. The thrill of fear crept up his spine, coiling tightly as he sensed the moment teetering on the cusp of transformation. He dared to glance at Sarah, her emerald eyes wide, a mixture of hope and concern painted across her face. It felt surreal to have her in that moment, a silhouette of light amid his encroaching shadows. There's an additional nuance we must discuss. The judge paused, folding his hands and pinning Ryan under scrutiny that felt as though it could ignite flames. Your deaths are not insurmountable, if managed appropriately, but your decision to hide these matters from your loved ones is troubling. The words cut deep, sharper than any wrench he wielded at the garage. He had tried to shield his children from distress, to protect them from his failures. The judge's gaze homed in on him, almost as if dissecting his every thought. Confessing now felt like declaring a war he feared losing. Your actions show potential irresponsibility, Judge Mitchell continued. I cannot set a precedent by allowing deception to go unchecked. However, your circumstances also demonstrate a willingness to help others, as evidenced by your actions towards Miss Sarah. I am compelled by your willingness to assist, but You need to confront your truths. The reality of those words hung in the air. Ryan's mind raced through memories of sleepless nights scheduling repairs, piecing everything together just to keep his children safe and unaware. He longed to speak, to defend himself, but the paralysis of vulnerability held him hostage. Finally, he summoned the courage to address the judge directly. Your Honor, I know I made mistakes. I've been drowning in fear. Fear of burdening my children, fear of failing, and failing not just them, but myself. His voice quivered, threatening to crack under the weight of his confession. But I want to be better. I want to show them that we can rise from this. The judge nodded, slowly absorbing the truth in Ryan's voice. A wise man once said that what defines us is not our mistakes, but our ability to rise after falling. I am willing to offer you a second chance. A glimmer of hope ignited within him amidst the swirl of uncertainty. Yet with that promise came conditions, a repayment plan he would need to adhere to, along with mandatory counseling aimed at guiding him. This was not just a lifeline, it was a call to action. Ryan felt a strange blend of relief and newfound responsibility. Sarah's expression shifted from worry to something closer to admiration, but also concern that he would, once again, grapple with the truths he buried. Still, there was an inextinguishable sense of clarity emerging from the chaos. With the judge declaring the session adjourned, whispers filled the room. Ryan tightened his grip on the bench, heart pounding, fate shifting slightly. It was clear the road ahead would demand more from him, an understanding that personal growth often emerges from uncomfortable places. He and Sarah stepped into the harsh light of reality together, and as her hand brushed past his, a new resolve settled in his chest. Perhaps this was the moment he would begin to confront not just his financial woes, but the deeper scars concealed beneath the surface. Stepping into independence felt daunting, and he faced the cascading stream of decisions that could either lead him to more chaos or toward a more fulfilling future. The time had come to face not only the challenges ahead, but also the moral dilemmas of truth-telling that echoed in his very being. As they exited the courthouse, Ryan's resolve solidified. If he could rise from this judgment and redefine his fate, perhaps he could finally pave a path toward the life he envisioned, one where honesty forged the foundation of genuine relationships. But lurking beneath this fragile hope was the realization that the real battle was just beginning. Would he be strong enough to meet the demands of his new obligations? And more importantly, could he withstand the temptations to revert to his old ways of evasion? The path forward beckoned ominously, filled with both threats and opportunities waiting to unfold. Ryan stepped out into the biting chill that followed them like a shadow. The echoes of the courtroom still ringing in his ears. The weight of the judge's words loomed larger with every step he took, pressing down with a sense of urgency. He glanced at Sarah. It felt as though they were walking a tightrope together, each step potentially leading to a plummet or a newfound freedom. Uncertainty clawed at the edges of his resolve. Where to begin? How to tackle the myriad tasks ahead, from adhering to the repayment plan to seeking counseling? He had to face these realities head-on, a challenge he had previously avoided, but that no longer felt like an option. With each stride, he mulled over the counselor's potential advice. The idea of unraveling years of avoidance soared in his mind like smoke, toxic, yet oddly necessary to clear the air. Ryan's phone buzzed in his pocket, jarring him from his thoughts. He pulled it out hesitantly, half expecting a message from one of his children, or perhaps a friend checking in. Instead, it was an email notification from his former employer, offering a position that seemed both appealing and daunting. He had worked there for years, pouring himself into the work, only to be blindsided by the layoff that had started the spiral of his financial woes. This was the moment to either return to familiarity or forge a new path. But could he withstand the judgment of old colleagues, faces that might remember his fall? "Dad, are you okay?" Sarah's voice cut through the whirlwind in his head. There was a softness in her tone, a recognition of the vulnerability that had crept back into him. Ryan took a deep breath, choosing to be honest. "I'm just thinking. There's so much ahead of us, and I'm afraid of messing things up again." Her eyes searched his, piercing but compassionate. "We can face this together. You're not alone, remember? You've got me and the kids." Her logic pierced through his hesitance like a beam of sunlight. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about them, his family unit. He needed to harness that thought to fuel action. This could be the pathway to growth, rather than a revisit of the past patterns that had spiraled into deceit. But would he successfully navigate the layers of counseling that awaited him? Could he expose his vulnerabilities and unravel the tightly held grip of defensiveness that had grown around his life? The contradiction made his stomach churn. And yet, he imagined a life where he embraced transparency, where each conversation with his children came free of the burdens he had once carried. It was a tantalizing idea, one that could lead to true connection versus the isolation he had settled for. As they walked towards the car, Ryan caught sight of a community center where a support group met weekly. The sign implied help for those facing financial challenges, but it also offered something more, a chance to learn, not just survive. Could this be where he started? The idea simmered like a pot just about to boil over. The thought of sitting in a room filled with strangers, pouring out his heart, felt daunting but also liberating. He could reclaim his narrative, reshape it from lies to lessons learned. Following days drifted slowly into the weekend. Ryan intentionally carved out time away from his shop to attend that first session. Each moment inside, grappling with emotional truths, became a stepping stone toward reclamation. It felt raw, and yet it enlightened him. The conversations sometimes sparking revelations about his own hidden fears and unacknowledged strengths. As each week blinked by, he found himself embracing the discomfort, looking for opportunities not just to share, but to learn from others. Their stories resonated deeply, echoing fragments of his own struggles and illuminating paths he hadn't yet considered. It was clear he needed to assimilate what he absorbed and use it as fuel for growth. On the final day of the month, Ryan stood at his workbench, scrutinizing the ledger he had meticulously maintained. He derived satisfaction not from the numbers themselves, but from the clarity of understanding they brought. But as he added the last of the figures, the realization hit him. The pathway ahead was only as strong as his commitment to honesty and accountability, and perhaps the real challenge lay not just in maintaining his financial obligations, but also in fostering trust with those he cared for most. Could he continue to find strength in vulnerability? And would the support from others guide him to become the father and provider he desperately wanted to be? With these thoughts tumbling around his mind as he closed the ledger, a disconcerting question loomed ahead. If commitments were made, what would he do when faced with the temptation to revert back to his old ways of secrecy? The pressure was mounting as he braced himself for the next phase of his journey. Ryan blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights of the workshop, the buzzing sound mingling with his racing thoughts. The ledger rested in front of him, a testament to both his failures and his progress. After weeks of grappling with his emotions, he had finally confronted the chaotic web of his life, a swirling vortex of mistakes and missed opportunities. What lay ahead now, however, felt ominously challenging. He could hear the soft laughter of children outside, a stark contrast to the turbulent environment of his mind. The joyous noise tugged at him, pulled him back to simpler days when the world was not clouded by deceit and hardship. Was it foolish to think he could reclaim that innocence? Could he really transform into the role model he aspired to be, the father who would inspire his children rather than leave them with lingering doubts and fears? That question gnawed at him. As he focused on the numbers, a flicker of doubt brought a tightness to his chest. Could he maintain this newfound clarity, or was the specter of his past always going to shadow his future? With a sudden determination, he grabbed his phone and crashed through the mental barrier that held him captive. He sent a message to the support group he had been attending, expressing interest in taking a leadership role in their next session. It thrilled him. This small action was a stepping stone into unknown territory, but each step held potential for growth. Not only would it help him confront fears, but it might also empower him to aid others. "Hey, Dad," Sarah said, peeking into the workshop, her voice breaking his concentration. She leaned against the doorway, concern written across her features. "You've been quiet lately. Is something bothering you?" Ryan hesitated. He realized that vulnerability extended beyond admitting his struggles to others. It also involved sharing his journey within his family. He looked at her, noticing the strength and compassion in her eyes, qualities he wished he embodied more consistently. "I'm just processing everything that's happened," he said, pausing to collect his thoughts. "But I want to help others, to feed the ideals we've talked about. It feels like it might help me too." She walked in, taking a seat on the workbench beside him. "Helping others will help you. You've learned so much. It's time to put that knowledge to use." Ryan nodded, heartened by her support. Yet as he considered the responsibility that came with leadership, anxiety chased away his burgeoning confidence. What if he didn't have the answers? What if he faltered in front of others? All the tales of failure flooded back, mingling with the hint of newfound hope he tried to nurture. The fear of stepping back into the arena of judgment was paralyzing. He spent the next few days in a whirlwind of preparation. Working tirelessly, he laid out an agenda for the session. As the time approached, he trained himself not only to articulate his journey, but also to listen intently to the stories of others. He wanted to foster a culture of mutual support, to prove that his past didn't own him, that he could wield it to build strength rather than cultivate weakness. On the day of the session, anticipation thrummed in the air, electrifying and heavy. He stood amongst a group of strangers, their faces unfamiliar yet strangely comforting. As he listened to the first few share their stories, each tale of struggle resonant and raw, he felt the gravity of the moment settle deep in his bones. It was finally his turn. Standing before the group, he opened his mouth to speak and felt the pull of vulnerability wash over him. Would they accept him? Would he find acceptance within himself? The familiar dread clawed at him. But as he began to share his experiences, two things became clear. The weight of his past no longer suffocated him, and there was unexpected power in connection. In the midst of his narrative, a profound realization struck him. The very judge he dreaded facing, the critical voice echoing his past mistakes, was gradually fading into the backdrop. This was no longer merely about recovery or survival. It was an opportunity to redefine himself, to craft a new identity steeped in honesty and growth. As he finished sharing, a pregnant silence hung in the air. He looked around the room. Eyes filled with empathy met his gaze, and he recognized that his journey could encourage others. But what if the true challenge lay ahead? As he left that day, infused with optimism yet shadowed by uncertainty, a thought lingered. What if the collective experience of vulnerability offered unexpected twists he hadn't yet anticipated? The need to confront his old overwhelming fears loomed large. With each small victory, another challenge, an inner conflict awaited him. Ryan's heart raced with anticipation and trepidation as he stepped onto this new path. Would he truly possess the strength to navigate the challenges that lay ahead? The first session had ignited something within Ryan, a flicker of hope buried beneath layers of doubt. In the weeks that followed, he committed himself to this journey of transformation. Encouraged by the group's continued dialogue, he stepped beyond his initial reluctance, embracing the mentor role he had tentatively claimed. Each meeting infused him with a sense of purpose that resonated not just in the workshop, but also rippled through his interactions with his family, especially Sarah. One afternoon after school, she found him again in the workshop. Her enthusiasm for a school project radiated as she shared her ideas on renewable energy. "Dad, what if we build a model wind turbine?" she suggested, dimples emphasizing her excitement. Ryan smiled, recalling his own fervor for engineering back in college, a passion long buried beneath the weight of adult responsibilities. "That sounds fantastic, Sarah. We could start on the design tonight," he replied, a shiver of anticipation sparking through him. In the days leading up to their project, Ryan felt a burgeoning bond with Sarah, a shared mission fostering a connection that had felt frayed in recent years. In the evenings, they brainstormed ideas, scribbling blueprints on paper and gathering materials from the workshop. These moments became a refuge, quiet yet impactful, starkly contrasting the cacophony that usually filled his mind. However, the exhilaration of these father-daughter moments was soon eclipsed by an unrelated heaviness. Just as Ryan began to grasp the joys of mentorship, he encountered an unexpected obstacle. One of the members from his support group, Mark, approached him with a troubling revelation. Mark's financial struggles and emotional volatility were worsening, and after a few conversations, Ryan learned that Mark received eviction notices regularly. What happens if they take your house? Ryan felt a knot forming in his stomach at the thought. The despair woven into Mark's eyes reflected his own past, an unsettling proximity to failure. "They've threatened to remove me next week if I can't pay my rent," Mark confessed, his voice strained. In that moment, Ryan's heart pounded. The ethical conflict stared back at him. While he felt compelled to step in, the limitations of his means loomed large. Could he lend Mark money? He didn't have much himself. The workshop's reserves were lean, and his attempt to save for a rainy day had barely begun. Ryan found himself paralyzed by the magnitude of the decision. Would he jeopardize his own stability to help someone in dire need? Was he qualified to act as a savior in this complex situation? Or would this choice reinforce the fragile balance he was trying to achieve in his own life? Days of contemplation left Ryan wrestling with guilt and uncertainty. He couldn't provide a permanent fix, but what if even a small help could serve as a decisive catalyst for Mark? Each potential avenue to assist seemed fraught with peril. The voices echoing from Ryan's past, reminders of hurried decisions followed by regret, taunted him. In this dilemma, he felt the undertow of fear. the question of whether to act or remain passive conspiring against his newfound resolve. It was this very fear that could unravel the progress he believed he had made. As he approached the session that Friday, the stakes were higher than ever. He knew Mark would be there, waiting for direction, and his own choices might directly impact another's life. Facing the group, Ryan realized this wasn't just a self-assigned task. It was about living the lessons he'd taught, embracing vulnerability not as a weakness, but as the burning flame that demanded courage. In that moment of clarity, he forged a plan. He would share Mark's struggles, presenting it as a challenge for the group, a way to galvanize their collective support. But what if vulnerability invited judgment instead of assistance? The apprehension pulled at him. He took a deep breath, pulling his thoughts together. Would he have the strength to turn this moment into opportunity? Or had he unwittingly stepped into a conflict poised to test him once again? With each passing heartbeat, he felt the weight of both his decision and the realization that the time to act had come. What lay on the other side of this confrontation? Would the fear of camaraderie prove liberating, or would it lead to yet another stumble on his quest for renewal? As the door creaked open to the meeting room, he understood. The moment of truth was upon him. Ryan stepped into the meeting room, the air thick with unspoken anxieties. The familiar faces turned toward him, a chorus of encouragement mingled with anticipation. He clutched a scrap of paper in his hand, feeling its rough texture, a reminder of the pressing duties he had thrust upon himself without even knowing it. "Hey, everyone," he began, fighting the quiver in his voice. The room settled, and he felt their eyes focus, a weight pressing upon him. "I want to talk about something important today." He hesitated, scanning their expressions. Would they see the fear behind his determined facade? Mark is facing eviction. Each word landed heavily, wakening the sentiments of the group. He steeled himself to continue, the contours of vulnerability etched in the furrows of his...
"I think we need to figure out how we can help him." Silence filled the room, a tangible entity plucking at the strings of emotion within him. He could almost hear the ticking clock, a reminder of time slipping away for Mark. "Though I can't help him on my own, I believe that together we can make a difference." Responses trickled in, some showing sympathy, while others shifted uneasily. Ryan noted their expressions, confusion intermingled with concern. "But what if we fail?" someone prompted, a voice that echoed his own fears. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. That's what brought me here, in the first place." He paused, the gravity of his own words striking him. His journey had always been fraught with uncertainty, yet it was that very uncertainty that had spurred his growth. Helping Mark doesn't just mean providing money. It means maybe we can help him find resources, give him guidance to stay afloat. We can lend our strength as a community. As he spoke, hesitation began to fade, supplanted by a subconscious request for support. He could feel the group processing his words, weighing the options. Ryan's heart raced with intention. He was, in this moment, embodying the change he had sought all along. Reference to hope surfaced, a memory of Sarah's enthusiastic face when discussing their wind turbine project. Why could they not bring the same energy, the same collaboration to Mark's plight? Together, we have skills, knowledge, and most importantly, we have voices that have gone unfiltered. Let's use them for good. Slowly, hands began to rise, individuals offering suggestions, brainstorming ways to support Mark without abandoning their values or pushing their own limits too far. Ideas weaved through the air like a tangible substance, resources for budgeting, workshops on financial planning, maybe even a community fundraiser. Bit by bit, Ryan noticed the collective hesitance transforming into something potent and constructive. As they discussed strategies, Ryan felt a shift within himself. The emerging camaraderie resonated, washing away his initial paralyzing doubt. In inviting the group into Mark's struggles, he had inadvertently deepened his own connection to both the workshop and those around him. Yet, underneath the surface of this newfound unity, an inkling of dread still clung to Ryan. He remembered the fragility of his own situation. What if his own stability was compromised in this act of solidarity? Would helping Mark put his family at risk? When the meeting concluded, exhaustion settled in with the relief. Friday nights usually meant solitude and worry, but this time the burden felt somewhat lighter. With Sarah engaged in her school project and all hands on deck for Mark, he slowly began to believe that help might materialize in unexpected forms. Just as Ryan was about to leave the room, he caught sight of Mark on the edge of the gathering. The gratitude in Mark's eyes was unmistakable, but so was the underlying desperation he bore. Ryan felt a twinge of responsibility interlace with hope. Tugging at his heartstrings was the realization that there was another layer to this story. He had shared vulnerabilities, yet he would soon have to confront his own personal dilemmas when balancing familial duty and community obligation. The decisions were multiplying, each thread leading into unknown territory. What if he couldn't sustain this momentum? What if trying to help Mark destabilized not just his life, but also that of Sarah? As that thought lingered, Ryan steeled himself for the next challenge ahead. The moment for introspection had arrived. Would he have the clarity to act when it mattered most? The weight of responsibility pressed upon him again. Was he on the brink of losing everything worth saving, or was this a path toward redemption? As Ryan navigated the doorway, the reality of their altruistic plans danced in his mind. Every step felt like a test of commitment with stakes higher than he had anticipated. He absently brushed his thumb over the edges of his frayed notepaper, filled some minutes before with potential and possibility. Now it felt more like a weight. Sinking into the familiar leather chair at his desk, Ryan's workspace greeted him with a muted glow from his desk lamp. Stacks of untouched paperwork surrounded him, a stark reminder of his own life hanging in precarious balance. He found it difficult to concentrate on what usually demanded his focus. The clock ticked rhythmically, amplifying his growing anxiety. Sarah's laughter floated in from the adjoining room, an innocent sound that cut through his turmoil. He cherished those moments, but couldn't shake the undercurrent of stress they entailed. Ryan stood and wandered into her space, where she sat sprawled across the floor, surrounded by colorful markers and sheets of paper filled with sketches of fantastical machines. Her creativity filled the room, but as he knelt beside her, he sensed his own light dimming in contrast. "Dad, look, this one flies!" she exclaimed, enthusiastic eyes sparkling as she pointed to a drawing resembling a whimsical bird with wheels. It struck him then. What if he approached his obligations with the same creative spirit? If he could guide Mark like he nurtured Sarah's imaginative explorations, perhaps he could turn this dilemma into an opportunity. That thought flickered hope. "It's amazing, sweetheart," he said softly. "Do you think it could actually fly?" "Of course, if you build it right," she replied, her conviction unwavering. Ryan admired the simple clarity in her belief. If they were to help Mark, he would need to build a plan that could withstand the gravity of the situation, one that kept everything, his family, his commitments, his integrity, in sight. The thought sent ripples through him. Could he craft something sustainable from these chaotic beginnings? It was a long shot, but fighting for this cause felt necessary, not only for Mark, but for himself, proving that he could embody stability and resilience amidst uncertainty. He stood up, determination settling in with newfound clarity. His work could bridge both worlds. He could project the essence of cooperation into the very entities vying for his scarce time. The adrenaline of purpose surged through his veins, and he began plotting actual steps. What if they could host workshops not just for financial planning, but also for skills that Mark could leverage? The idea crystallized. Perhaps Ryan's group could create a skills exchange, leveraging their collective knowledge to benefit Mark while simultaneously enriching each of them. He envisioned a structured series of sessions that would stimulate growth on all sides, a tree with roots visibly interconnected.
Yet doubts were lurking. But deep within him, a quiet question nagged. What happens when the past collides with the present? Just as the thought emerged, his phone buzzed with a message from a colleague. "Can you discuss project details? We need direction." The timing felt peculiar, as if the very universe was urging him to step into action. Yet everything felt intertwined with his own impending resolutions. Feeling a shortness of breath, Ryan returned to his desk, fingers poised over the keyboard. The tangle of meeting chaos and his personal journey began to play in his mind. It had to be executed meticulously. He couldn't afford a slip. After some thought, he clicked reply and crafted a message with a simple yet profound assertion. "Sure, I'm ready to lay everything out, but we need to discuss our collaboration timeline. I have other priorities that must align first." He hit send, his heart racing. Each decision felt like a strand weaving into the larger tapestry of his existence. Was he ready to confront the unfolding narrative of his own responsibility while reaching outwards? The truth clawed at him. He was stepping onto a tightrope, with the potential to help others, yet risking everything he held dear. The journey forward loomed vivid and uncertain. With all these thoughts swirling, Ryan wondered, would this newfound initiative pull him under, or could it be his lifeline? As he grasped the weight of what lay ahead, a nagging feeling settled in the pit of his stomach. Tomorrow, he thought resolutely, he must face Mark directly. The time had come to confront not only the core of their mission, but also his own insecurities about taking on such responsibility. What revelations awaited him on this path? The sun had barely risen when Ryan awoke, the shadows in his room shifting with the light, casting shapes that mirrored his turbulent thoughts. He had spent the night rolling through various scenarios, each one more intricate than the last. The mission ahead, it wasn't just about Mark. It was about proving to himself that he could handle the weight of dual responsibilities, the delicate balance between personal commitments and newfound obligations. As he brewed his morning coffee, the smell washed over him like a welcoming breeze. It grounded him. Yet, as he took his first sip, the bitter taste reminded him of the stark reality ahead. Today wasn't just another workday. Today marked the beginning of a chapter where he had to confront both Mark
And himself. He glanced at the scattered remnants of his last-minute preparations. The notepad scribbled with workshop ideas, a to-do list that grew longer with each tick, and reminders of meetings that now felt inconsequential compared to the task at hand. Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that this was a pivotal moment, one that could set the course of his life in unexpected directions. As he arrived at the small cafe where Mark had invited him to meet, he felt a tight knot twist in his stomach. The bright morning atmosphere stood in stark contrast to his internal chaos. Ryan took a seat at a table outside, the gentle warmth of the sun bathing his skin, yet his mind was a whirlwind of what-ifs. What if he failed to inspire Mark? What if the weight of this responsibility truly became too much? Just as these questions began to spiral, Mark appeared at the entrance of the cafe, scanning the tables until their eyes met. There was a flicker of uncertainty on Mark's face, but as he approached, it was replaced with a determined smile. "Thanks for coming, Ryan. I really appreciate it," Mark said, his voice steady, but his hands not quite matching the calmness as they fidgeted with the edges of his jacket. "Of course," Ryan replied, gesturing for him to sit. The moment hung thick with unspoken expectations. "I've been thinking about how we can tackle this together," Mark's brow furrowed. "I feel like I'm drowning, man. I just don't know how to get ahead anymore." The urgency in Mark's voice echoed the tension in Ryan's mind. "Let's break it down," he suggested, shifting from anxiety into action. He pulled out his notepad, determined to regain composure through methodical planning. "What are your skills? What ways can we connect those skills to what you need right now?" As they laid out the groundwork, Ryan felt the situation shifting. The responsibility of this meeting seemed to lighten with each passing moment as he observed Mark's eyes brighten while discussing career aspirations.
It ignited something within Ryan, a realization that leading Mark through this chaos wasn't just about helping another person. It was about rallying his own fears, his own desire for stability. However, just as Ryan felt the rhythm of their conversation turning constructive, a thought struck him like lightning. What if Mark was the bridge to other connections? His own circumstance was steeped in uncertainty, but helping Mark navigate could open doors in his professional sphere. Was he using this opportunity solely for altruism, or could it also yield professional growth for himself? "Ryan," Mark's voice cut through his thoughts, "are you even with me?" Ryan shook his head, pushing the invasive thoughts aside. "Sorry, I got caught up in my own head. Let's keep going." As they brainstormed, a seed of self-discovery lodged itself in Ryan's mind. He could harness not just Mark's skills, but also encourage others. This could evolve beyond a simple one-on-one exchange. It could become
a movement. But what did that mean for him? What risks were inherent in putting himself out there? Uncertainty crept back in, swirling viciously. How could he lead if he felt just as unsteady on his own path? Their conversation wrapped, and Ryan proposed a follow-up, a more formal gathering where they could include others. Mark responded with cautious optimism, but Ryan could see the uncertainty in his eyes. "Just think about it," Ryan added, his voice more confident as he leaned forward. "The way forward is often most fulfilling when we take those steps together." Walking away from the cafe, Ryan's thoughts were heavy with dual considerations. Could this initiative bridge the gap for both him and Mark? Was it achievable, without tipping the precarious balance of his responsibilities? As he prepared to confront the feedback from his colleagues about the new potential project, a gnawing sensation remained. He needed to take this chance, but how far was he willing to stretch himself? Tomorrow would bring more than just an answer. It might determine the very framework of his future, both personally and professionally. What lay ahead was not just a quest to help Mark, but a journey into uncharted territories of his own resolve and capacity. And as he steeled himself for the days to come, a singular thought resonated. Could he be the hero in both their narratives, or would he falter when the stakes became too high? The day unfolded slowly, each hour feeling like a tense countdown to the inevitable. Ryan sat at his desk, trying to immerse himself in routine tasks, but the lingering conversation with Mark reverberated in his mind like a distant thunderstorm. The familiar sounds of typing and chatting around him faded into background noise, a blur against the urgency gnawing at his core. What had begun as an obligation suddenly felt like a test of his own abilities. Each email he sent felt laden with hidden implications. Every meeting felt like a prelude to a significant decision. Could he truly lead a group, steer a movement, when he was still navigating through his own confusion? He shook his head, trying to dislodge the images of stepping outside his comfort zone. The growing anticipation only fueled his anxiety. Later that evening, as he walked home, Ryan's mind raced with possibilities. It wasn't just about facilitating Mark's growth, it was about his own evolution as a leader. He had always viewed himself as a support system rather than a frontrunner. Was he ready to change that perception? This thought collided with another. Was he merely exploiting his connection with Mark to elevate his professional standing? Each path seemed to converge at a moral crossroads that made him uneasy. Ryan dropped his bag by the door and paused, staring into the small home he had created, one that often felt too quiet, filled only with echoes of his past mistakes and dreams yet unfulfilled. The responsibility of moving forward weighed heavily. If he chose to push both himself and Mark towards something greater, there was no turning back. It was a leap into uncharted waters, and what awaited him could be exhilarating or devastating. That night, he drafted an outline for the upcoming gathering. He meticulously mapped out the parts he believed would resonate with the group: motivation tactics, collaboration strategies, and personal anecdotes illustrating growth. The act of writing grounded him, infusing him with purpose as strength coursed through his fingers. Yet beneath this newfound enthusiasm lay a bubbling anxiety that the higher he aimed, the harder he could fall. The next morning, Ryan walked into the office, determined to present his ideas to the team.
Each step felt deliberate, a mental preparation as he reviewed his notes in his mind. When the time arrived, Ryan found himself standing before a small crowd of colleagues. The air felt thick with anticipation and skepticism. Were they ready to join him on this venture? Would they support him or dismiss his ambitions as unfounded idealism? "Thanks for gathering today," Ryan began, his voice steady despite the internal tremors. "I've been working on something that could not only elevate our individual trajectories, but create a sense of community among us." He felt the weight of their gazes piercing through him, a mix of hope and doubt reflected in their expressions. This was it. As he shared Mark's story alongside his own vision of combining personal growth with professional development, he noticed the shift in energy. Curiosity sparked within the group. They began to lean in, ideas percolating in their eyes. Yet a part of him wondered if this spark would fizzle out or ignite genuine commitment. "Well, Ryan," one colleague said, breaking the silence that followed his presentation, "this could work, but what's in it for you?" The bluntness cut through him. The room fell silent. With his heart racing, Ryan realized this was the question he'd been avoiding. The thought of self-interest had clouded the noble intent he had when approaching Mark. "A chance to not only help others, but to grow personally is what drives me," he responded, each word a hesitant step into vulnerability. Sometimes we need to confront our own fears to rise. Their reactions varied, from hesitant nods to outright skepticism. Yet he saw the excitement emerging in some eyes, a flicker of recognition that maybe, just maybe, this could lead to something substantial. However, had he revealed too much? In laying bare his motivations, did he risk being discredited or dismissed? As the meeting wrapped up and small discussions ignited among his colleagues regarding his proposal, Ryan was filled with mixed feelings. If this initiative succeeded, it could reshape not only Mark's trajectory, but also enforce his footing in his professional realm. Yet the doubt still lingered, an unshakable shadow lurking behind his thoughts. He would have to confront an audience beyond his colleagues soon, one that could cement or derail his aspirations: Mark's peers. Ryan knew he stood at a pivotal junction. With the potential for growth thrumming at his fingertips, he felt the pressure escalating. If he failed to deliver now, it wouldn't just be Mark who would face repercussions. It would be him. Just as that realization set in, his phone buzzed with a text from Mark. The message read, "I'm ready for our first meeting. Let's make it happen." A wave of excitement and terror washed over Ryan. As the evening approached, he reflected on whether he was truly ready for what lay ahead. What would happen when the doors of possibility swung wide open? How would he navigate the expectations now thrust upon him? The moment to face his fears drew ever closer. This wasn't just a gathering, but a defining moment that could change everything. Would he rise to the occasion, or would the pressure become too much to bear? Ryan stood at the entrance of the support group meeting, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions churning within him. Bright fluorescent lights and the murmuring of members created a charged atmosphere that felt both familiar and intimidating. Yet, within that haze of uncertainty lay the profound weight of expectation, not just for Mark and the others, but from himself. The stakes had shifted beyond the safety of his workshop. This gathering could pivot his life toward all the potential he had begun to imagine. As he stepped inside, the room was filled with anxious yet eager faces, each person carrying their own burdens of struggle and vulnerability. It anchored him, reminding him that although he walked this path alone, others shared similar tread. "Thank you all for being here," he said, his voice steady, projecting a calm he felt only half possessed. "Today's meeting is extraordinary because it's not just about individual challenges. It's an opportunity to help one another seek solutions through collaboration." The group's faces shifted from apprehension to intrigue. In that moment, Ryan realized he held the power to transform their collective fear into collective action, not just for Mark, but for each participant present. He introduced the idea of building a network, a shared resource of skills and support. This isn't just about lending money, it's about offering skills and fostering connections. We can develop workshops like financial planning, marketplace skills, even personal development seminars.
As he spoke, he noticed Mark sitting amongst them, the man's earlier nervousness replaced with a flicker of hope, igniting an internal fire within Ryan. It was then that he understood the importance of leading by example, not merely for Mark's sake, but also to affirm his own growth and recovery. With each story shared, Ryan felt less by judgment or self-doubt. Instead, he felt liberated by their stories. Individuals spoke about their journeys, their hardships and triumphs, as if unearthing the collective vulnerability knitted them closer together. When the session concluded, a palpable sense of optimism hummed in the air. Members exchanged contact information, and plans for future workshops took shape amidst enthusiastic chatter. Ryan's heart swelled. He had succeeded in catalyzing a network where, together, they could confront their individual fears and uncertainties. Yet, as members dispersed, Ryan's anxiety shifted toward a new realization. This wasn't a simple resolution. It was a call to sustained action. He had initiated the collaboration, yet he had to follow through. A commitment to Mark and to those who now looked to him for guidance loomed large. The very next day, Ryan met with Mark again, a sense of solidarity weaving between them. "I appreciate what you're doing, Ryan. You've inspired me to think beyond survival," Mark said, his voice steady yet tinged with emotion. Those words cemented for Ryan the inward reflection he had long sought. It truly was never simply about avoiding failure, but instead about embracing the potential for growth in the face of it. They began mapping out the first workshop, spelling out details, gathering resources, and assessing the strengths of individual members, which ignited newfound purposes within the group. As Ryan shared his own struggles openly, transitions within the group blossomed. Others followed suit, sharing their stories, demonstrating growth and acceptance he once thought unreachable. Weeks passed, and the group flourished, transforming fear into collective strength. Ryan's workshop evolved into a supportive community, creating tangible results like resume writing sessions and skill trade-offs. Each successful meeting underscored his innovation. The tensions of prior months faded slowly to reveal a path brimming with fulfillment. By the end of the third month, Ryan received an email from a local organization recognizing their initiative, inviting him to share their success at an upcoming community meeting. As he read the words of encouragement, he felt elation that was both unexpected and richly deserved. He transformed from a man terrified of judgment into a figure of competence and commitment. He wasn't merely surviving, he was thriving. Reflecting on his journey from the courtroom's uncertain dread to this moment of public recognition filled him with a sense of accomplishment. He had accepted his vulnerabilities, reclaimed his narrative, and discovered that personal achievements never came in isolation. They blossomed through connection and collaboration. All of this unfolded within a web of transformational connections. Mark, Sarah, and each member of the group played invaluable roles in shaping his renewed identity. As he prepared his notes for the upcoming presentation, it struck him: the hardest battles often yield the most rewarding victories. What started as a necessity to stabilize his life transformed into an evolution of character, a bold acknowledgement of worth that radiated confidence. Standing in front of the room, poised to share their story, Ryan knew he had conquered his challenges, but his journey was far from over. It would need constant nurturing, but now, armed with growth and a sense of belonging, he welcomed the challenge with open arms. This was his new beginning, a life fueled with hope, where growth burgeoned from the intricate tapestry of shared stories woven between him and others. He had not only reclaimed his own confidence, but had also carved a space where vulnerability was embraced, transformation cultivated, and the future looked brighter than ever. This is your moment. Subscribe immediately to not miss the next exclusive emotional transformations. Leave a like now to support the algorithm, fueling more powerful stories that inspire change. You need to comment your thoughts and feelings about Ryan's journey and share this video with at least 5 friends who believe in personal redemption. Don't wait even one more second to make a difference. Your engagement empowers these narratives.